Welcome, everybody. I have with me a special guest, Ben from West Michigan Transformers. This is his YouTube channel. Ben, do you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Yeah, so I'm a Michigan resident, as you would guess by the title. Also a very big fan of Transformers. I have been playing Lord of the Rings since it came out in 2001. I was in fifth grade, and with plenty of siblings in the house, with money, being able to access the cards, it was like this hang out with the older siblings kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed the movies. I mean, they're fantastic, and the cards feel thematically appropriate to it. So I've just been a lifelong fan of the game. I'm probably the person in our family who has persisted the most in trying to keep people playing it. Uh, there have been probably multiple year-long droughts in that time, and I've tried to get like my brother to play it on summer break or what have you, but I'm always thinking about it, always building up deck lists. So
That is
never really.
the very skill we're hoping to tap into today. So today's video is what we're trying to hit is basic deck building tenets in 10 minutes or less. We're already at a minute 30, so we're behind our goal. But so Ben, we're going to do a couple videos with you. So I'm kind of excited for this ongoing series. So let's talk about building Lord of the Rings decks, very basic stuff. I know that some new people are coming to the game from whether it's, thinking about the movies and the IP for the first time in a long time, or, stumbling across this game in a garage. So whatever the case is, there's folks finding these cards. So what are the basic tenets of building a deck? What are the first things you need to do?
Okay, well, there are obviously rules based in the game for what you can and cannot do. And as you'd imagine, you need a Frodo or some other ring bearer, depending on how far into the game you go. And Frodo, along with the ring, which you also need, don't count against your deck total, but they're just there for you. So you need someone to carry the ring, and you need a ring. You need to have 9 sites in your deck. Depending on the block, they might be numbered 1 through 9. That's true of Fellowship Block, Towers, and Return to the King. And then in later formats, they actually go without number, but you just stack them from end to end until you've gone through 9 sites, if you make it that
If
far.
you're at this video just figuring out how to build a deck, you start with Fellowship. That'd be my big tip. Start with Fellowship or 2 Towers. Don't even worry about later stuff, right? Just
Yeah.
get to that if you fall in love with the game.
Let's frame the conversation that way. So this is a Fellowship Block deck. Great. In that case, you have a card pool of 3 series, Fellowship of the Ring, Mines of Moria, and Realms of the Elf Lords, which is still about over 600 cards to dig through. So that gives you a ton of options. Then it's a very interesting game. You're playing, in some sense, 2 alternate universes. On your turn, you are the Free Peoples trying to make it to Mordor and destroy the ring. And then on your opponent's turn, you are the opposition. You bring the Uruk-hai or the Nazgul or the Orcs. So in one deck, you have to have both of those sides combined. And they have to be equal in number. So you can't stack your deck one way or the other in favor. Deck has to be...
hard limit? Sorry, go ahead.
There's a hard minimum. A deck has to be at least 60 cards, which would mean then 30 Fellowship and 30 Shadow. But there's no ceiling at all. So if you want to go with a gargantuan Moria cycle deck and go up to like 250 cards, have fun. Good luck. Yeah.
And the sites don't count against your card limit, right? So the 9 sites do not count against. So really,
right.
you have at least 60 cards and then 9 sites, so 69 cards. And also Ring Bearer doesn't count, right? Ring Bearer.
Right. The Ring Bearer, and this is important, the Ring Bearer doesn't count against your deck total, and it also means the Ring Bearer does not count against the total number of cards in your Free People's side. So 30 Fellowship cards and a Frodo and a ring. Frodo is a Free People's card, but he's not a number in the deck. And then the ring, I think the rulebook says explicitly that it's neither considered Shadow or Free People's card. It's
Okay.
just what it is. Yeah.
Got it. So what should I start out with first? Because I'm also kind of a newbie to this stuff. Like, what do you think is like an easy starting package or an easy way? We're in Fellowship Block. You know, I have a pile of cards I picked up at a garage sale. What do I do, right? What's the first step?
Well, I'll tell you, I was watching one of your videos just last night, and I think you hit the nail on the head. If you have access to a starter deck, which comes obviously pre-constructed with a Fellowship, a Free Peoples, and a Shadow Side, and then gives you 9 sites, hopefully thematically, strategically appropriate to what you're doing, gives you a Frodo and a ring, that's awesome. For whatever reason, the starter decks might be a little bit unbalanced. Like you might have 26 Free Peoples, 25 Shadow. I'd have to look at it again to see how often that's the case and whether, again, Frodo has something to do with it. But anyways, starter decks are a great jumping off point. They give you a really interesting character. Each starter deck comes with a unique version of like the featured character that you don't get. Well, you could pull one in a pack, I suppose,
You could
but
pull a full
you
card.
know that you'll get it if you
Yeah,
get
yeah.
that starter deck. So the Fellowship Block Aragorn starter is really strong. It gives you Uruk-hai, Isengard, and they're just absolute monsters. And then the Aragorn deck gets you started with some fun Ranger shenanigans. And it's a version of Aragorn that provides healing to the Fellowship, which is a really good boon. Yeah, I would say start with a starter deck, and then if and as you have extra cards to add to it, um, I I really love theme over like trying to make the most competitive deck possible. Um, go with what inspires you. So if there's
Mhm.
a character in the game who you really enjoy, don't worry, especially as you're beginning, about like how competitively viable that character is or building a deck around that character is. Go with what makes you really interested in the game. And then I think you'll find ways to draw whatever's competitive out of that character if that's what you're interested in.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And Ben, you want to drop that little slide that you prepared, just like with some basic tenets of stuff as I talk here. I think that one of the keys to all of this is just having a positive experience. Like, don't sit there and get like you're trying to play this and you're so frustrated by the experience of this. So this is just a little slide that he kind of pulled together that I think is a really good maybe we'll just hit all of these. Like, you need to have a ring bearer, a ring, equal number of Free People Shadows card, minimum 60 cards, no more than 4 copies. The card pool
Yeah,
is definitely dependent on format, but I wouldn't worry about format, right? Just
yeah.
the first 3 rules, 5 rules.
Yeah. So about the 4 copies of any card with the same name, that's specifically worded because you can have characters who have a unique name but have different versions of themselves. So again, Aragorn, you have a starter deck version, but then you have 2 more. One is released in Fellowship of the Ring, I believe Ranger of the North, and then you have Aragorn, Heir to the White City in Realms of the Elf Lords. So you could put like all 3 versions of those Aragorn in your deck, um, but you could only have 4 total with all those copies collected. So if the card has the same like first name, the unique name, Aragorn, Legolas, Gandalf, then the subtitle is not relevant. You just can only have 4 copies.
Got
Uh,
it.
and then you can only have 4 copies of, any other card. So there are plenty of non-unique events, weapons, and so on and so forth.
Which this
The
kind of follows like common like Magic rules, or like other games usually have a 4-card limit, right? So it's pretty, I think, standard in CCG.
Yeah, keeps things from getting broken.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know we said 10 minutes. We're almost at 10 minutes. We're gonna go over 10 minutes, but it's fine. We'll
Sure,
make it
sure.
less than 15 minutes, right? So
Yeah.
what kind of makes a good deck, right? So are there certain cultures that play well together, or choose like Isengard and Rohan, right? Like, is there, what do you think there? What's your philosophy?
Well, there's definitely powerful strategies, and I imagine we're going to talk about the meta in the near future too. So I would just say right off the bat that in terms of shadow cards, if you just want something that's going to go out there and stomp, just reach for Isengard. It'll go great for you. They're absolutely fantastic. They're just built really well. We'll get into that more. But more broadly, this gets into like the way the game is structured. So as a player, you decide before the game begins who's going to get the chance to go first. And ultimately, the main game objective is to get your fellowship across the adventure path and survive with your Frodo and the ring. Be the first one to do it. In pursuit of that goal, like one of the best things you can do is bid aggressively, take a lot of burdens on Frodo at the beginning, choose to go first, get yourself set up really well, and then run down the adventure path. That's one of the big things you have to consider when you're building your deck, though, is this the kind of deck that wants to run and go first? Or is this a deck that prefers to actually have a little extra time for its fellowship to get set up? Am I okay with using the site advantage because when your opponent goes first and they move on, you get to play down your sites? In the fellowship block particularly, the sites are just brutally stacked for shadow power. So it's absolutely a viable strategy if you want to build a deck that plans to go second, to allow your opponent to go first, play down the sites that benefit your minions the most, and then just try to steamroll your opponent's fellowship as quickly as possible. Probably that's the first big consideration. Do I want to go first or do I want to go second? And how is my deck built around that? Then pay careful attention to what sites you have in your adventure path because they give you a lot of power. And then the answers to how do I want to build my fellowship deck? How do I want to build like my shadow side? That varies culture to culture. I will say just really broadly on the free people side in fellowship block, the strongest thing you can do is build into the entire fellowship a multicultural approach. In later blocks, you get a lot of monoculture strong support, and you can build like absolute stomper elf decks, Rohirrim, and decks, and so on and so forth. In the fellowship, though, the power is with the unique characters, and those are the ones who are in the fellowship. So you really do get value out of Pippin. Let's talk about Pippin a second. He costs 1, but he gives you 4 vitality, so he can soak up a ton of wounds. He can run in there with Hobbit stealth events and then disappear. He might, depending on the version you play, give you a cool ability like healing as soon as he's played. And then he fills a vital role in the fellowship in that because he's so weak, he's a hobbit, he's meant to go out onto the front lines and just get squashed by your opponent's strongest minion. And it actually feels kind of good, even though you're losing your character and you're sacrificing them, to know that they went out taking like the biggest threat. Because as long as you satisfy, here's this minion, I'm going to give them to a companion, then you've taken care of the need of that turn. Pippin's done his role. So anyways, in the fellowship block, all the main companions of the fellowship have something strong to contribute.
So I think that's a really good sort of segue to the next video that we're going to do, and maybe we'll just film it tonight even, but you guys will never know, about sort of the meta and sort of strategies for fellowship block and what decks are strong. I think this has been a really good sort of basic overview of kind of what looks like a good deck. So Ben, thanks so much for this. We're going to do some more stuff on deck building, a little more in depth, but I think this is a really good taste of kind of the things to come. So thank you very much for hopping on. And
yeah, thanks for having me.